Helen.
Any questions? Take that start.
My name's Helen Norman from the University of Manchester, and today I'm going to be talking about how workplaces and work family policy influence dad's involvement at home. So in the next sort of 15-20 minutes I'm going to start with a bit of an introduction about how work and care responsibilities tend to be divided in the UK. I'll talk about some recent work family policy reforms focusing specifically on shared parental leave, childcare and flexible working. Then I'm going to introduce my project, which is looking at which fathers are involved in looking after their children, which I'm leading at the University of Manchester with my co-investigators, Professors Mark Elliott and Colette Fagan, and our project partners Working Families. I'll present some of the first findings from that, and then I'll finish by reflecting on those findings and the way in which policy could be better designed to help mothers and fathers support balance work and care more effectively. Okay, so over sort of the last 3-4 decades, more and more women have been entering the labour market and after having children. And at the same time, men are doing more childcare and housework, but not at the same rate. Men still tend to do much less than women. And at the same time, there's been this shift in expectations about fathers' roles. So men are now expected to be involved in their child's care, but also being the main provider, being a breadwinner, still remains quite important. And after having children, it's quite common for women to move into part-time work. And some data I found, the most recent data I found was from 2014 for mothers with a dependent child under 5, showed that about 61% in the UK were in employment. And out of those in employment, over half, 54% worked part-time. Now, mothers with a preschool child are more likely to work full-time if they're in a more managerial, senior professional occupation. And this is what we call 1.5 earner family model, in which the man is full-time and the woman is part-time, is perpetuated by the fact that there are only limited childcare services that hinder women from working full-time. There's fewer reconciliation measures to support fathers, and there's also these sort of ingrained, widespread societal beliefs that children suffer if young children suffer if their mothers work full-time. So there are various work family policies in place for parents, and these are listed on the slide here. And while these different policies are designed to support parents' work-family reconciliation, the impact or the success of them has been quite mixed. So I'm not going to go through all these policies today. I'm just going to reflect on some of the most recent developments: shared parental leave, preschool childcare, and the right to request flexible working. So shared parental leave, it's a fairly new right for parents with children born or adopted after April 2015. It replaced additional paternity leave, and it allows mothers to commit to end their maternity leave and pay on a certain date, and then they can share the untaken balance of leave and pay as shared parental leave with their partner. So eligible parents can share up to 50 weeks of leave and 37 weeks of pay that were previously only available to the mother. And unlike its predecessor, unlike additional paternity leave, it's more flexible. So leave can be taken in periods of 1 week blocks, interspersed with periods of work, and parents can take leave at the same time. However, so far, take-up of shared parental leave and its predecessor, additional paternity leave, has been fairly low. So analysis by the Trades Union Congress showed that only 1 in 172 eligible fathers took up additional paternity leave. That's about 0.6%. Before its introduction, the government estimated that between 2 and 8% of dads would use shared parental leave. And then one of the most recent surveys on shared parental leave by My Family Care found that 1% of male employees out of 200 organisations surveyed in the UK had taken up shared parental leave. Now that figure might seem quite small. It might be a little bit misleading because that includes all male employees rather than just eligible fathers. So it might mean the figure's slightly higher. And actually I read something that Fathers Networks Scotland did a little calculation to see how that would translate, and it was about 20% of eligible fathers have possibly taken up shared parental leave, so it's slightly higher. So Fathers Network Scotland's assessment of shared parental leave, which is quite similar to what Working Families has found as well, is that firstly, you know, the introduction of this is great because it's a really important step in the right direction. It's helping to accelerate a cultural shift towards an acceptance of dads as parents, as hands-on carers. It's sending out a message about the importance of a father's role. And although that 1% of male employees in the My Family Care survey had taken up shared parental leave, lots of the dads were really positive about using it in the future. And research by Fathers Network Scotland in 2015, based on interviews with fathers, suggests that, you know, if dads are using shared parental leave, it does have some benefits. Dads said that, you know, taking leave soon after the birth of a child is really important because it not only allows dads to spend time with their children, but it also enables them to be more engaged, productive and satisfied at work. However, on the downside, one of the biggest obstacles to taking shared parental leave is financial constraints. It's really low paid, so a lot of dads can't afford to take the time off. A lot of research has shown that it's still perceived quite negatively at work. Fathers Network Scotland research found that fathers often face a negative bias and suspicion from managers when they're trying to seek a better work-life balance, when they're requesting time off work. And also, a lot of mothers are quite reluctant to give up part of their maternity leave. They don't want to. So although it's a step in the right direction, Fathers Network Scotland Working Families continue to campaign for it to be an individual father's right and for it to be properly paid. I think it's paid at something like equivalent to 25% of the average full-time weekly wage, so it's not very much. Then we come on to childcare. So there has been some recent developments in childcare, but there are still problems with accessibility, quality and flexibility, and it still remains expensive. Now, the first bullet point actually applies only to England, but the provision is quite similar in Scotland as well. So in England, we have a free part-time provision for 15 hours a week over 38 weeks of the year. That's over term time. In Scotland, it's 600 hours a year, which is about 12.5 hours a week for all 3 and 4-year-olds. In England, that was extended to 40% of the most disadvantaged 2-year-olds in 2014. In Scotland, it's vulnerable 2-year-olds are qualified for that. So if they're being looked after by under a kinship order with a parental guardian, or if their parent is in receipt of qualifying benefits. But the story is still the same. So for many families, there's still a gap between the end of maternity leave and the start of the free provision. And it's also really difficult for parents to find a job that's compatible with 15 hours, 12.5 hours a week over 38 weeks of the year. So what happens is many women, because they tend to be the lower earner in the family, they're the ones to reduce their hours to part-time or drop out of the labour market because childcare outside of that free provision is really expensive. And this graph here shows OECD data from 2011, and it shows the cost of purchased childcare. And the bar for the UK is the cost outside of that part-time free provision. The UK has one of the highest costs for childcare after Switzerland, equivalent to about 41% of the average wage. So then we move on to flexible working. So the right to request flexible working, that was introduced in 2003, initially for employed parents with children under 6. It's gradually been extended over the years, so now it's available to all employees from 2014. And that should have a positive impact on both men and women's work-family reconciliation, but flexible working is still more commonly taken up by women, particularly mothers in the form of part-time work. When men make a request to work flexibly, it's usually for a change to their work or for flexi-time, which are options that, unlike part-time work, don't reduce earnings. So according to the 2011 Work-Life Balance Survey, 28% of women compared to 17% of men had made a request to work flexibly in the previous 2 years. And while the proportion of requests accepted was similar for both men and women, about 60%, men were more likely to have their requests declined compared to women. And this graph here shows the percent of parents with different work time arrangements from that 2011 survey. So this was not triggered by the right to request flexible working, but it kind of illustrates the gendered nature of flexible work. So you can see that 50% of female employees with dependent children took up part-time hours in the last 12 months compared to just 27% of men. And in fact, women are more likely to take up all the flexible working options on that graph, apart from compressed hours, which is an option that doesn't reduce earnings. So even after more than over 10 years in operation, men are still less likely to make a request to work flexibly compared to women, and they're more likely to get their requests rejected. Okay, so that's a picture of the key policies in the UK which can shape fathers' and mothers' roles. But in addition to policies, there's lots of other things that we need to think about that can influence parents' work-family reconciliation. And the research that I'm doing focuses specifically on dads and what factors, aside from policy, influences their involvement at home. And these are just some examples of some of those influences. Now, the aim of our project is to identify which fathers are involved in looking after their children. And these are our core research questions. So our first one is, what influences father involvement at different time points of a child's life? So do the things that influence dads change as a child gets older? The second one, does a father's childcare and employment behaviour in the first year of parenthood affect how involved he is when the child is older? And then the last one, which I'm not going to go into today, we're also looking at whether father involvement impacts on the stability of the relationship between the parents. So if a dad's more involved at home, are parents less likely to split up? So to answer those questions, we're conducting longitudinal analysis of information at 5 points in a child's life. You can see the ages there. And we're using the UK's Millennium Cohort Study. This is a nationally representative survey following a cohort of children born around the year 2000 in the UK. So we're currently progressing the analysis to answer those questions, but today I'm just going to focus on the father's involvement when the child is 9 months and 3 years old in two-parent heterosexual households. So the sample for this analysis, our sample covers over 9,000 households in the UK. So first of all, what proportion of dads are involved in this sample? So at 9 months, 36% of fathers share childcare roughly equally with a partner, 64% do the least because the mother's doing the most, and a very tiny proportion, 0.5%, do the most. When the child gets to age 3, fathers are doing slightly less, so there's about 26% share childcare, 74% do the least. Okay. So, our analysis shows that the key things that shape father involvement when the child is aged 3 are, firstly, the parents' family and work arrangements in the immediate post-birth period when the child is 9 months old. So the dad is more likely to be involved when the child is aged 3 if he shares childcare roughly equally with the mother when the child is 9 months old. So this really highlights the importance of providing the conditions for fathers to be involved in the first year of parenthood through things like shared parental leave, because being involved in the first year means he's more likely to be involved as the child gets older. And actually, our latest analysis that we're developing now shows that that actually lasts. So that lasts, if the dad is involved in the first year, he's more likely to be involved at age 3, but also at age 5 and at age 7 as well. He's also more likely to be involved at age 3 if the mother works full-time when the child is 9 months old. So this highlights the importance of supporting mothers back into work after having children. And he's also more likely to be involved at age 3 if he works standard full-time hours of about 30 to 40 a week rather than very long full-time hours when the child is 9 months old. So this suggests that the hours a dad works in the first year of a child's life sets up a pattern of caregiving that persists 2 years later. The second thing is, so father involvement at age 3 is also shaped by the parents' work time arrangements at age 3 as well. So the dad is more likely to be involved if the mother at age 3, if the mother is employed full-time at age 3. And in fact, the mother's employment has one of the strongest influences on father involvement at that time. And again, when the father works standard full-time rather than very long full-time hours when the child is age 3, he's also more likely to be involved at that time. So, to conclude, in summary, there's been some really positive developments in reconciliation policy in the UK, but parents still face challenges when combining work and care. So it's really positive that policy has moved in a direction to facilitate fathers' involvement at home through things like shared parental leave, expansions of preschool childcare, and extensions to the right to request flexible working. But our research shows that a more supportive policy infrastructure could be achieved by helping dads to balance their work and family roles in the first year of parenthood, because if a dad is involved in the first year of a child's life, he's more likely to be involved later on. Shared parental leave, as I said, step in the right direction, sends out an important message about the father's role, but research shows that the most successful leave schemes are those with a portion of leave reserved specifically for the father as an individual right, such as in Sweden, for example, where they have their daddy month, and those which are properly paid. So take up, for example, in the Nordic countries, where their fathers are paid about 80% of their earnings, take up sort of over 90%, so it's much higher than the UK. There should also be limits to long hours of work. Our research shows that long hours in the first year of a child's life and when the child is age 3 reduces how involved a father is in childcare. So curbs to excessive long hours of work will aid a better work-life balance for men. The right to request flexible working, extended to all employees, that's a really positive thing. It potentially allows dads to reduce their work hours to spend more time at home. But it's really important that flexible working is promoted to men and men are able to use it. You know, the Fathers Network Scotland research by Working Families shows that cultural issues around dads taking time off work continue to be a barrier for a lot of men. So it's really important that we address this and allow dads to work flexibly, because this will help to reform organisational culture and norms about who should be working and who should be caring. And our research also shows that mothers' full-time employment has a positive effect on fathers' involvement at home. So supporting mothers back into work after having children is important, and that can be achieved by improving the supply of good quality, affordable, flexible childcare. You know, the lack of affordable childcare creates a real disincentive for many mothers to return to work because they simply can't afford to. And more needs to be done to address the poor quality and low pay in part-time employment, because many mothers move to part-time work after having children, and it's the low pay in these sorts of jobs that is a key cause of the gender pay gap. And that's it. Some references there from our work. Thank you.